right, and now we're going to move to the transition between swing and bebop. And this is all going to take place in a venue we call Minton's Playhouse. First floor of the Cecil Hotel on 118th in Harlem. Was run by Henry Minton, who was a tenor saxophone player. Now, Henry was a great player, and he had the distinction of being the first African American who was a representative of the AFM, American Federation of Musicians. Yeah, he was a rep. Very first brother to have that job. This helped him in business and to understand musicians because he was a musician. Now, the way this thing worked is he started having these open jam sessions where people could just come in and play and sit in. Now, this would have been a problem for the union, for musicians to just come in and play for free because there are guidelines. But because he was a union rep, so to speak, he could kind of smooth that over and use the proper language to make the powers that be more comfortable with this arrangement. They even had a house band led by a young electric guitarist that is putting his name Charlie Christian, who was blowing things up. He had gained a little fame after touring with Benny Goodman for a short while. But he was a very flashy dresser, and that kind of irritated Benny Goodman a little bit. But that was fine for Harlem and Minton's. And he was comfortable there, and he was there every night. Now, these sessions, everybody came. And they were experimenting with a new language, a new form, a new way of communicating this music in a small combo setting, not the big band setting. A lot of these guys came out of big band, but what they were doing now was 2 or 3 horns at a time in a rhythm section. Okay? The house pianist at that time was a guy who was very, very controversial. Some people said he played piano like an elephant with 2 left hands and 5 thumbs on each hand. That would have been Thelonious Monk, one of the architects of this new music that came to be known as bebop. Cozy Cole, I mean, all kind of drummers in there, Max Roach and whatnot. Of course, you had Dizzy in there, and Roy Eldridge, and there were many famous trumpet battles between Roy Eldridge and Dizzy Gillespie, his protege, and those things are legendary. But then you had the whole saxophone battle too. The old cats like Lester Young and Coleman Hawkins battling some of the young cats like Don Baez and Chu Berry, and eventually Charlie Parker and trombone player like a J.J. Johnson and people like that are showing up and walking up and playing. Now, these musicians, they had a way of filtering the musicians out who were not, how shall we say this, up to the task at the level they wanted to play. They had a tendency to play tunes in odd keys. So if you could only play it in B flat, you got to look because they were going to play it in B, which is why we have a lot of jazz educators who suggest to you that you learn to play everything in all 12 keys. Yeah, these guys, they had a way to make you sit down and stay seated because they did not want to hear you fumbling through their music. Another thing they would do is they would have these interviews before you could sit in. They take you into a back room, maybe a kitchen or bathroom, side room, and they go, yeah, young blood, so do you know so-and-so and so? Tell me the changes on the bridge. Well, do you know so-and-so and so? Really? How about that 257 in the 8th bar? Okay, you can go sit down because you don't know what you're talking about. So they filtered musicians. They made sure that the guys who walked up on stage could in fact play, were musically knowledgeable and sophisticated, and had command of the instrument and their music. They also had these very rhythmic melodies that they would create on top of the chord changes of standard tunes to make it more difficult for musicians who were not well trained and well practiced to participate. In this way, the music evolved at a very, very high level. As Cannonball Adderley once said, it is easy to make music when you start out with musicians. And because of this filtering process, what took place at Minton's included only the fittest of the fit when it came to musical competency. Eventually, Bird, Dizzy, Max, so many others came through playing. Charlie Christian, before he died, unfortunately. Just so many cats, man, that created this music for us, continued to grow outside of Minton, and this music went from club to club to club to club, and we launched an entire new evolution of this music we love and we call jazz, which set the pattern for all modern jazz after, say, 1940, 1945. This bebop is what made the change. And this change mainly took place at Minton's Playhouse, which was a jazz club where experimentation and the new avant-garde was what everybody was there for. The musicians, the audience, the owners, the managers, even the cooks in the kitchen. It was all about the new thing. So whenever you're dealing with this new music, whether it's bop or hard bop or acid jazz or whatever you might want to call it, whatever your taste is, please realize that you owe a great debt to Henry Minton for establishing Minton's Playhouse as a laboratory for the experiments that led to creating bebop and all of the great jazz music that followed it. Thank you.